Hello, this is week 13 of the 100 Great Essays Challenge, which is actually last week, the week of Thanksgiving, but I'm very behind. So the first essay was on The Pleasure of Hating by William Hazlitt, which is a really interesting concept. It was written in 1826, and he examines the concept that we need strong emotions like hate to keep us vital and alive, that it channels our energy into something. It has a really old language style, so it challenges you to keep pace. Like you have to figure out. It's a good one to look up some words. It's a good one to practice your fluency. And all three questions are actually really thoughtful. Like I really thought any of those questions, if you chose to use them as practice during your 1 hour, would really sharpen you as a reader and a thinker. The next one was written in 1989. It's called Lost in Translation by Eva Hoffman. The first question afterwards invites you to analyze the title, Lost in Translation. Because here she is looking at her translation when she moved from Poland to, I think, America. And so she uses this word translation, and it talks a little bit about her language. It talks a little bit about her figuring out who she was going to be, and it talks a little bit about her transition, obviously, from being there to being here. The other two questions besides question one are more introspective, and they invite you to look at your own experiences in relation to hers and connection to. At one point, she uses a Polish word for nostalgia to show her experience. She juxtaposes really interestingly the charmed childhood of a rich acquaintance and her poor life in Krakow. But she talks about how they were both, switching sides here because I got to fix something on my screen. She talks about how they were both paradise to her and to the other girl. They were both 13 and are looking back at what it was, and they thought of it as paradise even though it were very different experiences, which is an interesting way to kind of juxtapose. And then she switches to the present tense at the end to make it feel more immediate and to really emphasize the fact that she's looking back, and has a really great closing line, like a beautiful one. Finally, The Colonel, written in 2006 by Michael Hogan, is basically a portrait of a character, this guy who taught Michael Hogan tennis, who he called the Colonel. He gives you a lot of context first. It's really a narrative. It's memoir-like. In the second to last paragraph, he does this really interesting thing where he mentions all these really sad things that have happened in his life, but he just breezes by them and then uses tennis as the thing that was constant through like his divorce and other real tragic things that happened in his life. It's a really interesting way to show how tennis meant something to Michael Hogan. Question number one asks you to kind of distill the Colonel that he writes about down to a sketch using what Hogan gave you, which is kind of interesting. And question number three asks you to write something like he did, like a sport or an extracurricular or something in your life that has been a constant. That's something that you really worked for, that's taught you a lot of life lessons. So if you want to write about that, I'd love to read some of those. So that was week 13, which was last week, the week of Thanksgiving.